Welcome to Focus on the Candidates. My guest today is Steve Behar. Now, Steve has ran for city council, and he also ran for the state legislature a number of years ago. And Steve and I have been talking about the mayor's race, and there's been so much press coverage from the talking heads that I think it's interesting to talk to somebody who likes politics and who has an opinion. So, Steve, this whole race is really, really interesting.
It's been a very strange year in New York City. I mean, I think it's been a strange year in general, but it's been a really strange year in New York City too. This race, you and I spoke about a month before the primary back in, let's say, May, and I thought Cuomo was a slam dunk to win the Democratic primary. And then as those weeks towards the primary rolled on, I think it became clearer and clearer that he didn't have a campaign going, and that Zoran Mandami had a lot of momentum, and
Mm,
and it followed through. And now the mayor's jumped out of the race. He's gone. I mean, he clearly saw the writing on the wall. I don't think he wanted to be embarrassed by a sitting mayor getting single digits.
hmm
And I think that it seems like Sliwa and Cuomo have picked up a little bit of momentum, but Zoran is just far ahead. That you know, I don't think they'll catch him. It's October 9th. Um, a month before, like I said, a month before the primary, I didn't think anybody was going to catch Cuomo. So,
hmm
who knows? But right now, I don't see anybody catching Mandami. As far as the stuff on the ground goes, I Zoran is everywhere. Zoran is running a really good campaign again, and he's on the ground. You see him everywhere. And Curtis is everywhere too. Curtis is around. You see Curtis. I just don't see Cuomo. I think he's running the same kind of Rose Garden race that he did in the primary, and I don't see that working.
Wow. So, what you're saying is you don't think Cuomo's learned much from the primary?
It doesn't seem that way. I mean, he ran this primary where there was no ground game that I saw, at least in Eastern Queens, saw nothing. And he would, show up at an event or two and stand around with, other, relatively big name politicians. And that was it. And that's exactly what he's doing now. I don't see any ground game out in Eastern Queens. Um, I'm not getting mail. Um, I don't see anything. I'm really not sure if any lesson was learned.
Wow. Um, what I find very interesting is, the news media is portraying Mamdani as this radical communist, okay? But AOC is a Democrat socialist, and she's the darling of the Democratic Party right now. So there's the two narratives don't meet.
Well, I think the problem is that, and it's true of some people in the Democratic Party, but it's certainly true of, people on the right, is they don't understand what the word communism or the word socialism means. And um, to the right wingers, socialism is just anything they don't like. For example, I mean, I spent a couple of decades. I'm a corporate finance attorney who spent a couple of decades on Wall Street helping companies raise billions of dollars in the capital markets. And just a couple of days ago, some woman called me a socialist. I mean,
Really?
yeah, if I'm a socialist, I'm pretty bad at being a socialist.
Wow.
But and it's funny because I pressed her. I said, "What is a socialist?" And she couldn't answer it.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with communism. No one, they don't understand what that word means. And, Zoran Mandami is clearly not a communist, but he does have socialist leanings.
Mm-hmm.
And, at the end of the day, we're all part socialist. And this is what people don't understand. A socialist is someone who believes that the government should own the factors of production.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's certain things in our everyday life that is socialist. You go to the post office to mail a letter, that's socialism. It's a government-run delivery company. Your kids go to public school, it's socialism. It's a government-run school. Um, if you're a cop, you're a socialist. You're a government-run security detail.
Uh-huh.
That's socialism. The thing about whether someone calls themselves a socialist or a capitalist doesn't mean they're 100% one way, 100% the other. It's where you are on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's certain things that Mandami believes in that I don't, that would be more socialist. He wants to create government run supermarkets, which I don't agree with. That's certainly more
But you know, you spent time in Albany. I don't know if you've ever gone to the Honest Trade food co-op, but that's not a, you know, it's the profit motive is not the ultimate, you know.
Well, a co-op is one thing where, people are working and running the operation. It's another thing for the government to be running it. And I just don't see the government being successful in competing against, Walmart and Kroger and Stop and Shop and all these other large supermarket chains where, supermarkets are very low margin businesses. You're
Hmm.
talking, 1-2% is your margin. And I don't see the government being efficient enough to run those things. There's certain things that the government is better at running. They're better at running your local police. They're better at running your local sanitation department. They're better at running your local schools.
Hmm.
But there's certain things I don't think they're going to be better at. And running a supermarket is probably one of them. I believe in co-ops. I think that's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. But having a a New York City run supermarket that, for all intents and purposes, the mayor is the CEO of, doesn't make sense to me.
But when you talk to people right of center, let me put it that way, they think Mandami is like the devil incarnate, you know? And it's like, what's wrong with affordability? He's using that as a great, you know, campaign slogan. Doesn't everybody want to live in a place that's affordable?
I agree, and he's hit the nail on the head. And I've talked about this too, attacking both the right and the left on affordability. And at the end of the day, I think that it's something that we as Democrats need to continue to talk about and to run on and to do things about. It's how you go about it that really is the question. So again, I don't believe in government run supermarkets, but I also don't want property taxes to increase on middle class families. And I want to, I don't want water bills under Michael Bloomberg. Every time they needed money, they raised the water bills. And who's paying that? We and it's right and left that seem to want to really stick it to the working and middle class. When the left, which I consider myself part of, but when the left wants to solve a problem, a lot of times they'll try to solve it on the backs of middle and working class families. For example, when I was in the city council, they wanted to they wanted to lower the usage of plastic bags from supermarkets, which I agreed with. And if they wanted to ban them totally, I would have agreed. Um, but I had people on the left saying, well, what we'll do is we'll charge people, 5 or 10 cents a bag, and that'll cut down on the usage. And to me, that 5, 10 cents per bag was a regressive tax. It was going to fall squarely on the shoulders of working middle class families. That woman who's living on Social Security that goes to the supermarket every day or two to pick up just a few things. Why are we increasing her cost of living?
Right.
And it's the same thing. And this is a really funny one to me.
But
Is
Steve, it's the I think the incentive was for people to bring their reusable bags.
Yes, I agree with that. But
Yeah.
I don't believe in like charging people this. Just ban the bags. Ban plastic bags. They're terrible. They're terrible for the environment. They're terrible for our wildlife. Just ban them. But
Mm.
don't start sticking fees on working middle class people or seniors on a fixed income. It's the same thing with the congestion pricing in Manhattan. I believe we need money for our mass transit system. And the MTA is a disaster. The MTA is just pathetically poorly run. But to make mass transit better and to make more people use mass transit, the answer to me wasn't putting a fee of, at one time it was going to be $23. It went down to 9, and that's going to go up. But not charging middle and working class people, $9 to go into Manhattan to see their doctor, or the waitress who's works in the East Village who has to be at work by 4:30 in the morning to open at 5. She
Mm.
taking the subway take her 2 hours. Taking a car take 20 minutes. You're
Mm.
basically charging her $9 a day, nearly $200 a month just to drive into the city. The same thing with the janitor who's working the midnight shift in Sutton Place who has to drive to work. All of a sudden now you're trying to do something that's good, but you're doing it on the back of a guy, a hardworking middle class, janitor, and who's gonna pay an extra $200 a month for this.
Mm.
There's, you know, it's a regressive tax. I've spent my whole life fighting regressive taxes.
So do you think, the right is trying to scare people and saying if Mamdani becomes mayor, then all of the rich folks are going to leave, New York City. What do you say to that?
You know, we hear this all the time. We hear everyone's going to leave when De Blasio was there, and everybody was going to leave if we did this or we did that. It's New York City's New York City. And if you want to move to Iowa, if you want to move to Florida, fine. But um, it's not New York. It's the center of media, it's a center of entertainment, it's a center of banking and finance. It's the capital of the world. So all these threats have always been empty threats of this mass exodus from New York.
Mhm.
So again, it's scare tactics. And that's the bad part of our politics. It's scare tactics. Mondami's a communist. He's a Muslim. He's gonna he's gonna kill the Jews. He's gonna confiscate your money. I mean, it's crazy stuff. But the right lives on fear. Just saw today. I mean, I saw the New York Post online had a story about, Bad Bunny who's gonna do the halftime show.
Right.
And today they wrote an article today that he might not. This is the words they use. He might not have stood during the national anthem at Yankee Stadium last night.
Wow.
That's the big story from the New York Post. You know, we don't live in reality.
But I had seen, this is getting off the beaten track a little bit, but I had seen, the other day, I guess they asked uh Taylor Swift to do the halftime, and she said that she would not do it because they were not going to pay her. Well, her new album, I mean, within 24 hours, she made, I don't know how many millions of dollars. So, how much money is enough for these guys? I mean, she's got all the name recognition she wants. So she takes 10 or 15 minutes to do something for free. Big deal,
I agree.
you
I agree.
know?
But at the end of the day, you know, that's her prerogative. If she doesn't want to work for free, that's her prerogative. It's not hurting me. I really, it doesn't phase my life. Of course, and if she was the halftime show, they'd be complaining about her because they'd say she's woke. I mean, you know, people be saying, I'm gonna skip that woke halftime show.
Wow. Wow. I mean, the the language and the attitude of the two political parties are so hateful. Hateful. I don't remember it ever being this bad before.
You think it's really both sides though? I mean, and you could look at my social media posts. I mean, I am really hard on the right, and to the point where, um, you know, I've called this administration fascist and Nazis, but they're disappearing people from the streets. They're they're randomly taking black and brown people off the streets and sending them to what are essentially concentration camps in other countries where we can't control, you know, whether or not they're tortured or killed or anything. I mean, I think that demands us to speak out against that loudly.
You know, I, I follow politics pretty closely, as you know, and I think that the Democrats are to blame if they really wanted to not have Trump win. They would have had a ticket that would have done so. But Harris and Biden just didn't fit the bill.
I mean, it didn't work. It clearly didn't work. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who I used to work with in Washington years ago, who's still in Washington. And I said to him, you know, she wasn't the perfect candidate, and it wasn't the perfect ticket, and it wasn't the perfect campaign. But you had a guy who had been president before, who completely botched a response to a crisis, left the country and the economy in shambles, and grifted an entire 4 years, ignored the Constitution, and of course, when he lost an election, he sent a violent mob to the Capitol to kill Congress members and the vice president and overthrow the government. I don't understand how people voted for that guy. No matter how much you think Harris was a flawed candidate or it was a flawed campaign, how do you vote for someone like that? And I'll never understand it. It's well, I do understand it. It's it's racism. I mean, that's what they were voting for: the racism, the cruelty, the hate, and that it didn't matter. Nothing matters to them but that.
See, it's like it's so divided. It's so divided in this country, but yet either party will not embrace having a third party come in and maybe talk a little sense.
Well, the problem with a third party, Cynthia, is that it doesn't work under our constitutional system because to elect a president, you need a majority of the electoral college, or it's going to go to Congress to choose. And if you had three relatively strong parties, then you would never get a majority. You rarely would get a majority. And it would go to Congress
It
every
has to
year.
be three, four, five, six parties. I mean,
But
give,
even but you need to get you'd have to abolish the electoral college for that to work. You need 270 electoral college votes. If you have three parties or four policies or parties, no one's gonna ever get that 270.
I don't know.
So the whole idea of electing a president will go away. That's why we've evolved into this two-party system because you need that 270 electoral college votes.
Yeah, but the founding fathers didn't advocate for parties.
No, they thought there wouldn't be parties,
Hmm.
but um,
Surprise.
but the way I don't think that I think they when they created the electoral college, which they did for the sake of slavery, let's be honest. Um, but when they created the electoral college, I don't think that they saw that they were creating a system that would necessitate two strong political parties.
So we're getting off the beaten track a little.
Yes.
How many? There's what? A
Please.
little under 4 weeks for the
Yeah.
mayor's race, and I think that unfortunately, I think Cuomo is a snake, and I'm going to stand by the word snake because Eric Adams called him a snake, and then a week later endorsed him. Right?
I'm like, no.
Crazy. So, you know,
Well, look at Jessica Ramos, who I know Jessica, over 20 years, and she was one of the strongest voices against Cuomo when he was governor, demanding him to step down, and then when she jumped out of the race, she endorsed him.
mhm.
Politics is a terrible business.
But we have like a little less than 4 weeks to go. I personally would not be surprised if there was a lot of cheating involved. What do you think?
In what sense?
That the machines will be manipulated on election day.
I don't think that's possible because I've been through so many
I've seen it
elections.
done. I've
And
seen it done,
we've got we've got paper ballots that are scanned.
right?
So, there's a paper backup, and they do audits. They don't count everyone, but they do audits. It would have to be a real massive conspiracy for this. It's because it's not, a black box, which I'm against. I'm completely against, just pressing a button and the vote goes there because you don't know where that's going. But when you've got paper ballots, then it's hard to fix an election unless it's a massive scheme.
I had sent a message on Twitter to Mandami, and I said, "You want to win this thing? Then for every person that votes for you, have them sign an affidavit." And a friend of mine said that would be too much, that it would never be possible. But I think that would clear the air a lot.
Yeah, I'm not worried about in New York City. I'm not in general in our elections. our elections are fair in the United States. They've done study after study, and the cheating in our elections nationally is really de minimis. I think um, I remember Bush had done a study at the end of his term, his Department of Justice, and they found over a certain amount of period, a certain amount of years, there was 306 votes cast in the United States, and there was 86 instances of fraud, which is pretty much statistically zero. So I'm not concerned about this, about voter fraud. It's de minimis. It's pretty much zero.
It's not
It's just,
voter fraud, it's election fraud.
yeah, I just don't think it exists. I think that this was brought out from Trump when Trump lost, and it's now kind of snowballed into actually being a thing. And so that's not, I'm not concerned about that. I mean, I would be concerned about a campaign that Trump and his people are running because I wouldn't put it past them. But
So
I've seen the counts. I've been I've been at election sites after closing. It'd be really hard to do it in New York City.
okay, so if you're gonna make a prediction, maybe it won't be as accurate as the primary, but
I was
what's
gonna,
gonna happen?
I'm like the kiss of death right now. I think Mandami wins, and I think he's gonna break 50%.
Okay.
That's what I think's gonna happen.
Do you think he should watch his back?
Yes, I think so. There's a lot of crazies out there.
Okay.
Um, and I like Zoran as a person. I've met him, I've spent some time with him. Um, he's really smart, he's very articulate, he is very charismatic. And like I said before, I think some of his policies are just awful, terrible, very, strange. I mean, for example, we talked about the supermarkets before. He also is talking about freezing rents for 900,000 uh, rent stabilized apartments in New York City. Those rent stabilized buildings are already going bankrupt, and they're already falling into disrepair. And you can't just say, I'm going to freeze the rent unless you're also going to freeze the property tax, and you're going to freeze the maintenance cost, and you're going to freeze the water bills, and you're going to freeze insurance. And he's not. And all that will do is bankrupt more and more landlords, especially smaller landlords. And it'll also make our housing stock fall into disrepair, and make the housing shortage worse.
Mhm.
And I hope that since he's a smart guy, when he does get into office, that he'll surround himself with smart people who will kind of bring him down to earth a little bit.
So it's Cuomo, Mamdani, and Sliwa.
Yeah,
You don't think Sliwa has a shot?
I don't think so.
Okay, then what would he be doing after? I mean, he's 70 now.
Sliwa, he'll go back onto the radio and rage every day about, stuff. That's what he does. I mean, he goes on the radio and yells about stuff. That's his job. And
Okay,
the question is Cuomo. What does Cuomo do, right? He's 67.
right.
He's I would think he's probably done, right?
Maybe he's got 9 lives.
He definitely has more than one.
Well, so give me numbers. Let me hear your prediction.
I I think Mandami just slightly breaks 50%.
Okay,
And I think Sliwa gets about 15, and um, you know, Cuomo gets, something in the 30s.
okay. So there would not be a wise wide margin between Cuomo and Mamdani.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty big, in a three-way race, breaking 50 is pretty good. And he'll be somewhere around 20 points higher.
But Cuomo's not innovating his campaign at all. I
Nothing. 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 I mean, this guy should be everywhere every day. This guy should be waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and going to railroad stations. This guy should be walking around supermarkets. He should be everywhere. And I don't see him.
wow, wow. But he's still raking in the money, right?
Well, I think that there's a lot of people with a lot of money who are frightened of a Mandami administration, and they're doing what they can. I mean, you've got billionaires like Bill Ackman, who's trying to stoke fears into people. And this guy, I don't know what's happened to Ackman. He's become a real white nationalist. This guy, but he's just on social media and spending his money stoking fear.
Hmm. Now you watch news in New York City. Do you think the coverage is fair?
I think the regular news coverage has been very fair. Talking about the local stations, I don't see I don't see any issues with that. Clearly, the New York Post is that it's owned by Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News. That is clearly you know slanted and trying to scare everybody. And I don't know. You remember that movie years ago, Escape from New York,
Hmm.
when New York was like it was like a prison. It was basically the city became. They're trying to portray New York City's becoming that if Mendami gets in. And they were also stoking a lot of, racist fears and xenophobic fears because, he's not white and he's Muslim. And I think they're really trying to use that as a way. And it just shouldn't be. I mean, I don't think somebody's religion should be, taken into account.
Now, when he won, Steve, when he won, was the media shocked?
I think there was some shock. I think it was a combination. Like I said, 4 weeks before the election, I thought Cuomo was a lock. And I saw over the next few weeks the momentum shifting towards Mandami. So it wasn't pure shock because I think people were starting to see, this guy really could win. But I think there still was a little bit of wow, like he beat Cuomo. I think there was still that like, wow, look at that.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk after Election Day, and you could share your thoughts, and maybe as the new mayor, because it will be a new mayor, takes the reins. Maybe you can assess from time to time how well he's doing, or how well New York is doing. Would you do that?
Absolutely. And
Okay.
and I'm hoping that the new administration will, like you talked about before, we talk about affordability. And I hope that not only just affordability, but ensuring that working middle class people and working in middle class families can afford to live in the city.
Right.
And I think we really need to work on that and make this city as affordable as possible and as livable as possible.
How much is the going rate for rents in New York City?
I don't know official numbers, but I see people struggling to find apartments at like $2,000. And
Oh,
if you're a family of four and you're making, 40, 50, $60,000, that's a tough nut.
right,
And
right.
that's our problem. And that's why we've got a lot of homelessness in the city. The homelessness problem is getting worse. And part of it is that affordability. And also a big part of it is that this administration has been terrible on on its homeless policy, and maybe not even policy, but just the function of it. Um, I have a friend who's been in a shelter for a long time, and I've been trying to get her out for like 2 years, and I've gotten no help, even ignored from the Department of Homeless Services. And she's living in a shelter that's run by a nonprofit who ignores me and does nothing to get her out. I'm, basically, their incentive is to keep her in there because they're getting hundreds of dollars a day to keep her in this shelter. The system's broken. The
Well,
system in New York City is broken, and we're spending billions of dollars every single year just housing these people. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, think the last time I saw there was something, but like nearly 70,000 people in our homeless shelters, and we're spending 5, 6 billion dollars on homeless. You could basically give every homeless person in a shelter $50,000, and it would be cheaper
well,
than what we're doing now.
well.
And and this is the problem. And there's a disincentive for these nonprofits to help people get out of the shelters.
Hmm.
And I've seen this firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll even name the name. My friend lives in a shelter that's run by this organization called Samaritan Village. And a couple of years ago, I called and I got a phone call. Maybe they knew my name, so I got a call back from the head of government affairs there. And I spoke to her 2 times, and maybe she figured out that I wasn't working in the city council anymore. And then she stopped talking to me. She stopped returning my calls. All I was doing was trying to help my friend, get her voucher renewed and get out and get an apartment, find a job. And I called the general counsel to that organization several times, who's never returned a call.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, my friend was in another shelter in the Bronx, and no one would answer. I once called the chief operating officer of that one, and he called me back and put me in contact with someone in the shelter, but seemed angry that I had the audacity to call him. I mean, you're trying to help someone get out of a shelter.
Well.
And these people are angry at you because you're trying to get them out of the shelter, or they're ignoring you.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So we'll talk after Election Day.
That sounds good to me.
So everybody that's listening, please mark your calendars. The first Saturday of August is Candidate Recognition Day. On July 4th, we're celebrating our 250th birthday. On August 1st, let's celebrate all the candidates who have run for office to make sure that we have reached 250. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful day.